Chapter 131. The winds were strong. Connor was snuggled up in Olivia's arms as the snow swirled around them. Olivia pointed at a spot in the ocean and said, "My baby disappeared in this part of the ocean. He wasn't as lucky as you. He stopped breathing as soon as he was taken out of my body. He never had the chance to look at the sun. Little one, do you think he feels lonely at the bottom of the ocean? Why don't you go and keep him company? The water might be a bit chilly. You might feel uncomfortable for a bit, but it'll all be over soon. And finally, you'll completely disappear from this world. That would scar him for life. You're his favorite son. That would surely break his heart, right?" Olivia pinched his face with a sad smile. "At least you're not like my baby. His existence was a tragedy from the minute he was conceived to the moment he passed." She held Connor's hand as they slowly walked to the edge of the ship. "Connor, look. It also snowed heavily like this last year. Son, you must be lonely in the ocean. Don't worry, I've brought a friend for you." The bottomless ocean was like a monster with its mouth wide open. It roared loudly like it wanted to devour everything. Smiling gently at Connor, Olivia said, "I'm so sorry, darling. I won't be able to repay you for your sacrifice." Mina got the cake and turned around, only to see that Connor was gone. She was used to him going off on his own since he learned to walk. But he could never get too far with his tiny limbs. She held the cake in her hand as she went to look for him. She called out, "Master Connor, where are you hiding?" But once she got a good look at the empty corridor, fear crept into her heart. It only took her a short while to get the cake. How could a baby that just learned to walk disappear from the long corridor? She looked at the railing. Connor shouldn't have been able to fall over it. But she panicked and couldn't think straight. Dropping the cake, she ran toward the bow of the ship. When she found Ethan, she told him, "Mr. Miller, Master Connor has gone missing." Marina gave her a slap before saying, "All I asked you to do was put him to bed. How could you lose him like that? You're dead if something happens to my baby." Ethan glared at her, then turned to look at Brent. "Go check the security cameras. Find him." Mina was scared out of her wits. "Master Connor disappeared in the time it took me to get him some cake. Would he have fallen into the ocean? That's impossible. He's too big to squeeze under the railing and too short to climb over it. Unless someone threw him over." Ethan quickly refuted her theory. "Someone? Who would dare to harm his child on this ship? Unless..." Olivia's face flashed in Ethan's mind. It couldn't be. She loved Connor so much. She wouldn't hurt him. Ethan disappeared from the deck. Everyone else was panicking. The ship was so big and the child so small. If he really fell off the ship, he wouldn't even be able to call for help. On the other hand, Ethan was running straight to the top floor. The tragedy with Olivia's baby happened there. Did she really bring Connor up there? Ethan ran with all his strength, but the snow was falling heavily, obstructing him. Chapter 132. Olivia's words rang in Ethan's mind. "Look, the snow tonight is so beautiful. Today is the day our baby died, Ethan. Have you ever spared him a thought this past year? Even for just a moment? I thought he was only a tool for you to exact revenge on me." Ethan had it all wrong. She thought Olivia's target was Marina, but he didn't think about Olivia's dead child. She purposefully picked today for her revenge. It was so that she could sacrifice Connor to her dead son on the day he passed. That was a great way to get back at Marina and himself. Ethan was anxious and furious. Olivia was still the same person she used to be. She had never given up on her extreme thoughts. His heart went through a roller coaster of emotions in the span of about a minute. His palms were already drenched in cold sweat. He sprinted to the top floor as fast as he could. The first round of the fireworks show was over. The next round was in the middle of preparation. At this moment, it was like the entire world had fallen silent and dark. Only the sound of Ethan's running could be heard. There was no one there on the deck of the second floor, so Ethan ran to the edge of the deck. The ocean was still roaring, waves still crashing onto the hull of the ship. Ethan didn't see anyone. Was he too late? He felt a chill sweeping over him before it spread from top to toe. Suddenly, Mina's voice came from downstairs. She was excited to tears. "How did you get here? Master Connor. You scared me to death. I've found him. I've found Master Connor. Hearing that, Ethan was relieved and slumped onto the ground. He was sweating all over from the running, but the wind made him feel chilly. He put a hand over his chest, where he could feel his heart beating very quickly. Smiling, he covered his face. It was the first time in his life that he felt such intense emotional swings. He didn't notice Olivia, who was hiding behind a wooden barrel. She looked at the snow that was falling from the sky. She gave up on her plan to cause Ethan deep hurt at the final moment. Honestly, she didn't have the heart to take Connor's life. He was still so young. He shouldn't have to pay for the crimes of Ethan and Marina. How evil would she have to be able to murder a child? On one hand, Olivia hated how weak she was. On the other hand, she felt ashamed that she tried to do something like that. She turned all the guilt she had into an explanation. Maybe there was a lot of misunderstanding between her and Ethan. Connor shouldn't have to pay for these mistakes. Her plan used to be dying with Connor in the ocean, but there was one more thing she hadn't done. That was to uncover the truth of what happened all those years ago. After Ethan left, she dragged her tired body back to her room. 10 minutes after that, Ethan appeared in her room. His appearance would mean that he had guessed that she was the one who took Connor. She didn't remove the necklace she gave Connor when she let him go. Ethan was the one who designed the necklace. Of course, he would know who it came from. There was still the half-eaten cake and the candles on the table in the room. Olivia was prepared to be tortured by Ethan for what she did. She had given up the best chance she had at hurting him. She thought the only thing waiting for her was endless torture from him. His footsteps got close, and the room was completely silent. Raising her head, Olivia saw Ethan eating the leftover cake without speaking. He just kept eating. He never liked eating cakes. But here he was, eating cake without asking for an explanation. After he put down the fork, he took a tissue and wiped his lips. Then, he walked toward Olivia. Olivia thought he was still going to torture her, but he stopped before her. He said in a deep voice, "One day, you'll realize that not going through with it today was the best decision you could have made." Chapter 133. He left the room after he said those words. Olivia did not understand his intentions. He did not yell at her, and neither did he throw a temper tantrum. He didn't even question her actions. What did he mean by the best decision she could have made? The door closed with a bang, and a new round of fireworks started. Looking at the fireworks, they burned brightly but only for an instant. She felt like her life was like that. She shone brightly for a short while before endless sorrow and darkness were all that was left. As everyone was enjoying the lively atmosphere, Olivia suddenly heard a woman scream. Master Connor. Was she just hearing things? Next moment, she saw a few men run past her door in a rush. One of them was holding Connor. She didn't know what was going on, but she was already running after them before she knew it. Connor's shrill cries rang across the corridor, but everyone else was focused on the fireworks show. Most of the security guards were busy helping set off the fireworks. Mina's leg seemed to have been shot, so she couldn't run after the men. She could only watch as they took Connor away. Olivia realized that she was not the only one on the ship who was scheming against Connor. She was thankful that she changed out of her evening gown before this. It allowed her to keep up with the men. She ran like her life depended on it. As the men were starting up their speedboat, she knew she wouldn't make it in time. She took a chance and leapt toward the boat without regard for her own safety. She managed to get on. The men were planning to escape from the scene. They didn't expect someone to suddenly appear on their boat, and it was a woman who was out of breath, no less. Olivia's stamina was not what it was back in high school, where she was able to run more than 1,000 yards without needing a break. She wanted to act tough in front of these men, but she couldn't stop panting when she said, "Put him down." She couldn't even complete a sentence properly. She also had to grab hold of the edges of the boat to prevent herself from falling off. Even she was amazed that she was able to catch up with such a sickly body. Reality once again proved that people were more forgiving toward pretty women. The men were nervous when they saw another person appear on the boat suddenly. They had raised their guns at Olivia's forehead. But she suddenly fainted before she was able to finish her sentence. The man closest to her even grabbed at her instinctively to stop her from falling. "What do we do about this woman, boss? Should we throw her overboard?" Faint light shone on Olivia's face. She looked innocent and harmless. Her white down jacket was swaying in the wind, making her look even weaker and sicklier. The leader of the group looked at her face and said, "No need. Let's go." The speedboat quickly left the vicinity of the cruise ship. One of the men said, "Is she serious? She ran all the way to our boat to become a prisoner." Mina watched everything go down at the railing. She was anxious and angry. She was only noticed by the security guards after she dragged herself out of the corridor with a bleeding leg. "Master Connor has been taken." Mina ignored her bleeding leg and crawled her way to Ethan. Marina's first reaction was to slap her. "How could my son be taken by someone out of nowhere? Why can't you take care of a child?" How many times? Chapter 134. Mina retold the entire incident from the beginning. When Marina heard that Olivia also got on the boat, her first reaction was to pin the blame on her. "I knew Olivia was up to no good. She must have been the one who hired those men to take our child. Ethan, you have to get Connor back." Ethan felt a strong urge to slap Marina, but he was not in the habit of hitting women. He thought no one in their right mind could have said what Marina said. Holding back his anger, he said, "Get her out of here." Brent had already begun investigating. Ethan was touched when he saw footage of Olivia recklessly going after the group of men. He knew better than anyone that if she wanted to hurt Connor, she would have done it long ago. She did love Connor so much so that she went after him even when she knew the men had guns on them. Looking worried, Brent whispered, "Mr. Miller, could your identity have been exposed? Did they take Master Connor to exchange him for that item?" Ethan pursed his lips, his icy temperament overwhelming. No, Ethan shut down that assumption immediately. He replayed the footage of the men shooting their guns. Although they disguised themselves, their pistols were visible. He zoomed in on the footage and said, "Look at their firearms. Those are MK-23s. They were the standard issue weapons of the Special Forces in the early days. These pistols are comparable to the Desert Eagle in terms of firepower, but their downside is apparent. They're too bulky. Even without silencers, they're not easy to use with one hand. They wouldn't think to use such clumsy and outdated weapons. Secondly, look at how these two ran. That isn't how trained Special Forces retreat. So, these guys are not them. If they were here, they would have held the whole ship hostage and not just a child." Brent didn't understand. If it isn't them, who else would dare to cross the Millers? Ethan put his hands behind his back as he looked into the distance. He said with certainty, "No matter who they are, they put so much effort into this operation. Since they aren't after the life of someone, they must have done it for the money." That's true. Miss Carlton spent a lot of money advertising this event. Especially these fireworks show. She spent a few $100,000 on that. This huge amount must have spurred someone to kidnap Master Connor. With a sigh, Brent said, "Miss Carlton also announced the details of the event. We were supposed to handle the security, but she insisted that her uncle do it instead. It would have been fine if they were just trying to line their pockets, but Master Connor got kidnapped. Even Miss Fordham was taken." Ethan frowned at the mention of Olivia. If the kidnappers only wanted a ransom, they would not harm Connor yet. But Olivia had put herself in danger by throwing herself at them. The kidnappers were well prepared. They chose to carry out their plan on sea and not on land. They would have had a hard time trying to evade surveillance on land. On the other hand, mobile phones didn't even have a signal at sea. So, it was going to be hard to track someone. Ethan's biggest fear was that they were based on an uninhabited island. That would make their search way harder. In the following hours, he made a lot of calls and set up a detailed rescue plan. Even after that, Ethan couldn't relax for a moment. His brows were still furrowed with worry. Chapter 135. The cruise ship docked ahead of schedule before the sun was even up. The guests did not know what happened and were wondering why the event ended prematurely. After all the guests had disembarked, Marina began to throw a temper tantrum. Why haven't you sent people after Olivia? That bitch colluded with the kidnappers to take my son away. Brent felt a strong desire to slap her when he heard what she said. He kicked the culprit that allowed the kidnapping to happen into the room. It was Marina's uncle, Marcus. Marina became furious when she saw that. What's the meaning of this? You're not looking for Olivia, and instead, you brought my uncle here. You want to know what? Why don't you explain yourselves first? Ethan sat on the couch with a scowl before slamming a stack of receipts on the table. I allocated a budget of $1 million for Connor's birthday party. How much did he line his pockets with? Marcus was Helen's only brother. After she passed, the Carltons had always treated him well, but he was used to slacking off. He was also a compulsive gambler. It was apparent that Marina insisted that he organize the birthday party so that he could skim some profits from it. It would have been fine if you just wanted your uncle to make a profit. But have you ever considered if he was up for the job? He tried to reduce costs by purchasing food that was no longer fresh, which was fine. But he fired the professional security team that I paid a lot of money for. He replaced that team with some hooligans off the streets who have no experience as bodyguards. They were all busy lighting fireworks and watching the fireworks show while the kidnapping went down. Their lack of professionalism caused a major security hazard. Mr. Miller, please let me explain. Ethan had already stood up, his figure casting a looming shadow on Marcus. He walked toward him menacingly as his eyes glowed with rage. In order to save money, you kept the original chefs but sent their apprentices away. You hired people at a low price to handle their jobs. What did you think this place was? Your backyard. Standing up, Marcus tried to explain, I only wanted to help you cut some costs. Your money doesn't grow on. Ethan kicked him on the shoulders, causing the man to cry out in pain and beg for mercy. Then, he met Ethan's rage-filled gaze and fell silent. Those people were able to get on the ship because you hired people without conducting background checks. My son was kidnapped because you tried to skim profits. If anything happens to him, I'll feed you to the sharks. Marina looked at the receipts and the quotations. The eggs alone cost 5 times the market price. She had known that Marcus was greedy, but she didn't think he'd do it to this extent for the sake of profits. Uncle, this is all your fault. Mariana threw the quotations on Marcus's face. Marcus was still trying to explain, how would I know it would end up like this? I had hired someone to train them beforehand. You can't blame me for Connor's kidnapping. Ethan stepped on Marcus's shoulder harder. Glaring at Marcus, he said, if you tell one more lie, I'll cut off your tongue. Marcus instinctively covered his mouth with his hands, his whole body trembling in fear. Ethan felt the urge to kill Marcus when he was reminded of the fact that Olivia and Connor were taken because of him. Brent returned from outside. He said with a heavy expression, we tried to track the GPS on Miss Fordham's phone, but there's no signal. As for the speedboat, it didn't return to a dock. It sailed farther out to sea. It was the worst-case scenario. The sea was an unpredictable place. They could be anywhere. There was no way to track the whereabouts of the kidnappers. Chapter 136. Marina quickly ran toward Ethan and said, it has to be Olivia. You just need to look into her. In the worst-case scenario, you still have Jeff in your hands. If we threaten her with Jeff, she'll give Connor back. Ethan stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Marina, his eyes filled with restrained anger. Ethan, Marina, sometimes I wonder what nonsense goes through your brain. Leaning forward slightly, he whispered, I'd like to split your head open and take a look, if not for Kurt's sake. His deep voice shook Marina, who looked at him in fear. But all she could see was anger in his eyes, an anger so fiery it seemed like it could burn her up. Ethan was at the verge of losing control. He was trying his best to hold back his anger, but his eyes revealed the raw anger and hatred he had for her. You'd better pray nothing happens to them. If not, no one will be able to save Marcus. Not even if Kurt returns from the grave and begs for me to spare him. Marina's back was covered in a cold sweat. She slumped onto a chair powerlessly. Was it really not Olivia's doing? What happened to her child? Ethan stood before a map. Brent analyzed it and said, there's an archipelago nearby. It encompasses over 300 islands. A lot of those are unrecorded desert islands. Send drones to scout out the islands. You can exclude the inhabited islands. Focus your efforts on the islands that have complex terrains and don't have a lot of natural resources. Be careful not to alert the kidnappers. And keep the operation a secret. Understood. Have the fingerprints on the bullet been extracted? Brent quickly said, yes, I've also run them through our database. There are no matches yet. If we can't track them using the fingerprints, try looking into the bullet and the guns. Go look around the black market. These guns are not very common these days. Yes, Mr. Miller. Olivia woke up in a daze, but she remembered what happened. Quickly sitting up, she opened her eyes. She wanted to see where Connor was, but a dagger was placed on her throat. The person holding said in a raspy voice, "Don't move." Olivia saw that she was in a run-down cabin. This place shouldn't be far from the seaside. She could hear the sound of waves crashing against the rocks. She looked at the man beside her with the corner of her eye. She saw that the man wore black. She felt that the blade on her neck was very sharp, and she also saw that Connor was not in the room. Tensing, she said, "I won't move. Go easy on me." The man asked, "Tell me, why did you jump on the boat last night?" Although she did not know who these men were, she knew that the enemy of her enemy was her friend. "I did it for the kid. According to what I know, you're not his mother or his nanny. You risked everything for a stranger's son." "A stranger's son? It's the son of my enemy, to be exact," Olivia said with a smirk. She continued to explain without the man asking. 2 years ago, I had a happy family. I had a loving husband until a woman appeared. She had a baby with him, and she pushed me off a cruise ship a year ago in winter. I was pregnant. Then, I lost my child and my husband. My father became ill and fell into a deep coma. My family became bankrupt. The woman took my husband and became the new Mrs. Miller. She even got to hold a birthday party for her son. Olivia gritted her teeth in anger. The man did not expect to get such a convoluted story from a single question. "You're..." Olivia closed her eyes and slowly said, "Ethan Miller's ex-wife." Chapter 137. The man laughed mockingly. Everyone thinks that Ethan is a devoted man, that he's always been a gentleman. No one mentioned that he had an ex-wife. Clenching her fingers tightly, Olivia said with a sorrowful expression, "I was just a plaything to him. He wouldn't have allowed anyone to know about me. Last night was the anniversary of my son's passing. I snuck on the ship to steal Connor away, but you beat me to the punch. Your son died, but why did you want to steal their son?" Olivia said slowly, "I wanted his son to accompany me in death. Have you any idea how I've been living this past year? I've never had a good night's sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see my son on the operating table." Olivia got emotional as she started to cry. Her tears fell onto the dagger's blade, tracing along the blade to the man's hand. Moving the dagger away, he exclaimed, "Why are you crying? I didn't do anything to you." Olivia turned into a vengeful woman. She didn't care that the man beside her wasn't Ethan. She just kept cursing and complaining about how bad of a person Ethan was. Meanwhile, outside the cabin, Tom was chewing on a blade of grass. He had a mischievous expression as he said to Jerry, "Hey, do you think Jack has fallen for the woman? He's been with her the whole night. Stop talking nonsense. He's seen his fair share of women. He won't fall for her so easily. I bet he thinks she's suspicious. He's keeping an eye on her so that she doesn't escape. If she was suspicious, he would have thrown her overboard last night. If he didn't want her to escape, he could have tied her up. He didn't have to stay up all night and watch over her. He must have fallen for her. Honestly, I've never seen such a beautiful woman before. She should have woken up. Let's go in and take a look. Jack is probably torturing her for information. I hope he doesn't kill her." They took off their masks and opened the door. What they saw stunned them. The usually imposing Jack Stone was standing beside the bed awkwardly, trying to comfort Olivia. "You can't bring the dead back with your crying." Olivia was not only sobbing uncontrollably, but she was also using the sleeves of Jack's jacket to blow her nose. "Isn't Ethan an asshole? Yeah, he's the biggest asshole ever. That bastard. Why is my life so hard? Although Olivia's crying was a little too much, she did look pitiable against the backdrop of the run-down cabin. On the other hand, Jack with his dagger in hand looked helpless in comparison. When he saw Tom and Jerry at the door, Jack's expression changed. He said to them coldly, "Get over here and comfort her." Tom was at a loss for words. "Why do we need to comfort the woman you made cry?" Jerry was gentler. He took a grass-woven rabbit out of his pocket and placed it before Olivia. "Here, take it. You can have this rabbit if you stop crying." Tom slapped him on the head, saying, "She's not a child. That won't work." Olivia looked at the two in front of her. They were young boys, probably around the age of 12 or 13. Their silliness could not be hidden by the masks they were wearing. The man with a pistol was so cold before, but he comforted her as soon as she started crying. They all seemed like good people. But they did kidnap Connor. Why did they do it? Olivia was still sniffling, but she was no longer crying. She looked at the man beside the bed with her teary eyes. He was very tall and wore a mask that covered half his face. She could only decipher his emotions through his exposed lips. Olivia said tentatively, "That child stole my son's life. I hate him with every fiber of my being. Can you guys hand him over to me?" Chapter 138. Jerry quickly said, "That won't do. We need him to ask for ransom." When he finished saying that, Tom hit him on the head. "Are you dumb? Why would you say that? Can't you even keep a secret?" It was a surprise to Olivia. How could someone be bold enough to risk their lives by threatening Ethan for ransom? Perhaps before they could deliver the ransom letter, Ethan's men would have raided their headquarters. "How much are you planning to ask for?" Olivia prodded. Tom stuck out a finger. "He's rich, so he should at least ask for $1 million. Olivia looked at him in disbelief. $1 million. They were risking their lives for only $1 million. Ethan would probably think that they were mocking him. Noticing Olivia's gaze, Tom instantly lost confidence. He's supposed to be rich, right? He should be able to fork out $1 million, right? If not, $500,000 will do. Olivia facepalmed herself. This was her first time feeling sympathy for a bandit. If they asked for $1 million, Ethan would probably let them leave in one piece. But if Ethan saw them asking for $500,000, he would feed them to the sharks. Noticing that Olivia was silent, Jerry spoke up timidly, could it be that he doesn't even have $500,000? Well, what about $200,000? Olivia sighed in exasperation when she heard them lowering their price even more. "Oh no, Tom, I heard before that rich people may look rich on the surface, but in reality, they owe the bank a lot. Do you think Ethan's broke? Did we waste our efforts by kidnapping his child?" Olivia couldn't stand it anymore and suggested earnestly, "Why don't you raise the ransom a bit? If not, Ethan might think that you're mocking him." Tom stuck out two fingers. $2 million, then. Are we being too greedy? Olivia put a hand on her chest. Goodness, where did these bandits come from? More. $5 million. Don't be a coward, add another digit. $50 million. Oh, my mama. Tom couldn't even handle uttering such a huge number. $500 million. When Olivia spoke those words, Jerry staggered and fell onto the ground. "Tom, how much is 500 million? Is it even more than the number of grasses in the mountains combined?" "Miss, are you pulling our leg?" Olivia was a little frustrated. "Do you know how much they spent on the fireworks last night?" Tom thought about it earnestly. "Those were beautiful fireworks, and I looked at them for a long while. It's a pity that I couldn't bring them with me, or Mom and Grandma could have seen them as well. Jack once bought some sparklers for me for $5. So, the fireworks show probably cost a few $1,000s. You can add some more digits to that. Tens of millions." Tom fell next to Jerry, his mouth gaping. He couldn't close his mouth for a long time. Olivia could figure out their backgrounds after the exchange. It was obvious that the two bandits were ignorant and even a little innocent. "I'm curious, how did the likes of you manage to get onto the ship?" Tom hastily said, "Some time ago, Jack went ashore to buy supplies. He overheard that Miss Carlton was spending a lot of money to hold her son's first birthday celebration. So, we wanted to do something huge for once. They happened to be recruiting bodyguards for the cruise, so Jack applied. Olivia was surprised. Judging by how Brent worked, he wouldn't have hired some random person to be a bodyguard. She asked in shock, "That's it?" Chapter 139. Tom was elated. Yeah, Jack said that he'd bring helpers, and he wanted meals instead of money. The boss, Mr. Gibson, agreed right away. We ate a lot of food in the kitchen, and it was delicious. I even took some food with me when I left. Olivia finally understood why the newbies managed to succeed. They were just lucky. Marcus Gibson probably didn't expect anyone to be this bold. How could someone cause problems on the cruise or kidnap Connor? Ethan and the rest probably never thought that the bodyguard position was by name only. So, this group easily achieved what they aimed for. It was quite a funny coincidence. So, you're doing this for money. Where's the kid? My grandma is taking care of him. He drinks a lot, and he almost finished all the milk we milked from Buttercup, Jerry complained. While Olivia was questioning the two, Jack had been standing at the side and staring silently at her. Are you done with the questions? Jack asked in a low voice. Olivia was about to say something when the man twirled the dagger in his hand. With a flash, the blade of the dagger was held against her neck. Speak. Who exactly are you? Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. Even though the two young lads were novices, this man wasn't. His eyes looked like those of a snake's as they peered through the mask, observing. The man was waiting for her to let down her guard before he struck. If you dare hide anything again, I'll kill you right now. No one will know if you die here, the man said coldly. He stood by the wooden window, his tall figure blocking the sunlight that spilled in from outside. His emotions were hidden under the mask, and only his tightly pursed lips were visible. The extreme murderous intent in his eyes sent chills down Olivia's spine. The words she said when she let down her guard probably roused suspicion. The two children weren't bad people. Since they were connected to Jack, she wanted to bet on the notion that Jack wasn't a bad person either. I'm not lying. You can find photos I took with him on my phone. She took out her phone, which had lost all signal, and showed them the album she had always refused to touch. The album consisted of photos she secretly took of Ethan in the past. In the photos, he was either working, sleeping, or drinking coffee. There were also a few photos where he was sleeping, and she had taken a selfie with him with a funny face. All the photos proved one thing: she was messing around while he worked. The two shared a happy past. There was also a set of photos she had taken after she got pregnant. But Ethan had completely vanished by then. Only she remained in the photos with her huge belly and a faint smile on her lips. There isn't a single lie in my story, but there is something I lied to you about. Even though I hate Ethan and Marina, their child is innocent. When I saw you guys taking the child away last night, I went after you without another thought. Taking a deep breath, Olivia said, I don't want to harm the child, I want to save him. I never thought that I would faint from the lack of energy. Just as expected, her words won Jack's trust. He gave her a deep look before releasing her. You're quite kind. I originally wanted to dump that kid in the ocean, but I gave up in the end. I couldn't harm an innocent child. Since your target is money instead of the kid, I think we can work together. Olivia stared at the man with a clear look in her eyes. I hate Ethan, and I know him better than anyone else. I can help you get the money and retreat in one piece. In exchange, give me the child. I want to make sure that he's safe. Chapter 140. Deal. At first, Olivia felt that Jack was too quick to agree. But when she opened the door to look for Connor, she was stunned by the view before her. The scenery was beautiful. She could see the azure sky, the pretty blue ocean, and the green mountains. They were on an island surrounded by the sea. It felt like they had been abandoned by the rest of the world. This was why he didn't have to threaten her at all. There wasn't any signal here, and no one would hear her even if she shouted. As long as they didn't have the intention to harm Connor, Olivia would never dream of risking anything. As soon as Olivia opened the wooden door, she saw Connor on the ground, trying to chase a kitten. The clothes on his back were covered in dirt, but he looked extra happy as he giggled. He kept mumbling the word, kitty. This kid doesn't behave like a rich baby at all. He's a good kid. I like him. While Jack was speaking, Olivia was already running toward Connor. Connor also stretched out his arms as he shouted happily, Mama. Tom was confused. Are you sure he's not your son? Olivia said a little sadly, he's just a baby. He'll call anyone his mommy. That may not be the case. Tom's mother was worried that he would get hungry, so she fed him some milk. He didn't even spare her a glance. Olivia remembered that the child had called her mama when they first met. She recalled that Connor was only born after her child died. Could it be that her child had reincarnated into Connor? Was that why they were extra close? Holding the child tighter, Olivia kissed him on the cheeks. I'm so glad you're okay. Don't worry, miss. We didn't bully him. I wanted to save the cake I stole, so I didn't eat it, but I gave him a piece anyway. Olivia had gathered enough information on their living condition. The island didn't even have basic amenities. There were no wires, no internet, and no signals. They only had a solar panel they bought from the outside world, and electric lighting was rare at night. Fortunately, the island was rich in resources, and there was also a freshwater source. The few islanders' lives depended wholly on nature. They didn't even steal the jade pendant hanging on Connor's neck. In reality, these people were truly good-natured. While Olivia pondered, Connor's face suddenly turned red. Olivia had never taken care of a child before, so she asked worriedly, "What's the matter?" Connor seemed to be exerting his strength. In the next moment, Olivia felt warmth on her palm, and a nasty smell invaded her nostrils. Oof, the kid pooped. Tom pinched his nose, distorting his mask in the process. Martha Jenkins, Tom's mother, appeared. Pass him to me, miss. I'll clean him up. Olivia subconsciously refused to give the child away. I'll do it. Martha poured the boiled water into the basin. It was Olivia's first time cleaning up a child, so her movements were clumsy. Connor wasn't irritated, though. He sprawled on her legs and grinned happily. When Olivia was done, Martha took a piece of cloth cut from a shirt. She dried Connor, then placed a diaper under him. Martha was in her 50s, and her head was covered in silver hair. The skin on her fingers was rough. There was a gentle yet embarrassed smile on her wrinkled face as she said, I hope you don't mind, miss. We don't have those things in the city, so we can only use a homemade diaper. Tom had already taken off his mask, revealing a handsome face underneath. He said earnestly, Mom didn't want the baby's skin to get irritated, so she made the diaper from her thermal clothing. She only had one set, and it was her birthday gift from Jack too. Olivia looked at the diaper which had yellowed from the washing. She had a complicated feeling in her heart.